Welcome, everyone, to the Department Number 2 podcast, brought to you by the Western Theater in the Civil War. My name is Derrick Lindo, and I'm joined by my co-host, Darryl Smith, and we are going to be talking about a very special event that is, I think, very special to Darryl. And it's one that, honestly, I don't really know a whole lot about. It is the Battle of Augusta, Kentucky, and this 1862 little affair. We're going to get into the weeds of that a little bit and see what we don't know, and see what, if anyone knows anything else extra about it, that can maybe help with some research opportunities here. So, Darryl, how are you before we get going?
I'm doing well, not too bad. We talked before we started recording. Work's been a little goofy, but other than that, things have been going well. It's going to be a busy season coming up. I've got some things going on. I've got some tours to plan and get that all worked out. Our Perryville Symposium, got to get that
Yeah,
knocked out,
yeah.
and a couple other things. I'm working on a book review for a book that actually I think I'm going to recommend to you, Derek, since you're working on some 1861 Kentucky stuff,
Hmm.
and you can't see my camera because for some reason it went off. But I got this book to review from the emerging Civil War. It's published in Western Australia, and I'm not
Wow.
making that up. And it's interesting because when a distance or a measurement is given, they also put a metric in there as well. So it's kind of annoying, but it
Yeah.
is called Reckless in Their Statements, Challenging History's Harshest Criticisms of Albert Sidney Johnston in the Civil War. And it's
Okay.
written by
Yeah.
a guy named Lee S. Goggin,
Hmm.
and it's pretty well written. And he goes through just various premises or conceptions or misconceptions about Johnston, and kind of tries to blow up most of them is what he's really
Hmm.
trying to do. It's well written. Again, I don't necessarily agree with all of his premises, and he's some of the things that Johnston was operating under, lack of manpower, bad roads in Kentucky, whatever. Well, the Union troops are operating in some of those same things as well, right? They still have to
Hmm.
deal with the same bad roads and whatnot. So I'm working on a review for that. It'll be coming out on Bridges of Civil War. But I think it's a good book for those who are interested in the early period of Department Number Two. Right, it's
Yeah.
very salient to what we try to cover. Um, he goes against some of the like the Connollys and even the Tim Smiths of the world. And again, like I said, I
Interesting.
don't always agree. Yeah,
Right.
man, I don't always agree, but it gets you thinking, and I think that's a good thing. If a book can
Hmm.
get you to think a little bit, whether you actually buy into what the author is telling you or not, if it gets you to dive a little deeper into a subject and come up with your own ideas, I think that's it's got some benefit, it's got some worth. So
Yeah.
there'll
Yeah.
be more on
I'll
that.
check that out.
Yeah,
Especially last year, I read Tim Smith's book on Johnston. The what's it
yeah.
called?
Iron Dice of Battle.
Iron, yeah, the Iron Dice of Battle. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had to turn and look
yeah.
at it. Which I really enjoyed because it focused so much on Johnson as a general,
Hmm.
and so I'd be really interested to see what this person has to say about it. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of agreed with what Smith said for the most part in his, and
Yes.
what Johnson is having to deal with the lack of support,
Hmm.
from Richmond. Really no support at all at times, it seemed like, and the food that's sitting down there in Nashville, he can't touch. That's got to go to Virginia. Which
Right.
seems
Yeah,
so
there's
stupid.
some interesting premises there. I mean,
Yeah.
this author kind of makes a little bit of an argument as to, well, Johnston didn't need to go to Fort Donelson necessarily. I'm being very, very high level with that comment, right?
Hmm.
And then tries to break into the reasons why, but I still lean towards Tim Smith's premise of, Johnson had a crap show there at Donelson in terms of command structure, and Johnston didn't help himself by ironing that out. And Johnston, I mean, he spends an entire month at Columbus,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah. He
spends
does.
no time at Fort Henry or Fort Donelson,
Yeah.
which I just find so interesting because if he's taken the railroad that crosses over just south of Donelson and Henry, which I'm not really sure if he does or doesn't, but if he's taking that, he's only got what a 10 or 12-mile ride horseback to go visit these other sites. So I really still believe that Johnston dropped the ball there,
Oh, definitely.
and didn't help himself with the circle of brigadier generals that are assigned there.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a crap show for sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. That's a nice way of
Which
putting it. In the
Yeah,
back of
that
my
that
mind,
that'd
I'm
be
thinking
another
another word.
great conversation for us to have, I think, is, after you get done doing the review, and
Yeah,
if I can get some time to read that book, we'll talk about Johnston and especially leaning on the Fort Donelson stuff. Because I think that's where the door gets kicked in, there in Fort Henry. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. I think, um, I think again, Tim Smith, I thought laid it out very well in both his definitive account of the Henry and Donelson campaign, and then again with Iron Dice of Battle. So
mhm.
I am that's where I lean. Is in the Tim Smith direction, but it's good to get this guy's perspective. And again, it's actually very well written. I was
Yeah.
very impressed from that because sometimes my opinions of some of these books that I'm sent to review, I'm going, oh my gosh, what were you
Oh
thinking
yeah.
here? Which is just
Yep.
so bad, right?
Hmm.
Anyway, I'm officially offering my services to be a reader, not necessarily an editor, but I'll be a reader for folks, especially those who want to do self publishing.
Yeah.
Just send it to me first, because like, just yeah,
And be willing to take some constructive criticism,
that's right,
and
that's right.
if something needs to be fixed,
Lord knows I'm
listen.
not a god, and but there's some real basic things that should never be missed that
Right.
often
Right.
do get missed, or just
Y-
formatting of a self published book. Just
Yes. That drives
serious,
me nuts
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah. So haven't been able to do a lot of reading per se lately from actual books, but I've been doing a lot of indexing for books
Hmm.
lately, and which some of the things I've been reading for that, I mean, been interesting.
Yeah.
Um, some of them are great, and then others, it's like, I don't really agree with the premise.
Hmm.
One that just came out, so I don't really want to mention it too much on that. But um, yeah, it's just it's some good points there, but I felt like some of the arguments were a little um I don't know what the word to use here, to be honest. It just I saw some things in there that I felt were some of the same old tropes. Um,
Yes,
I
which
thought we were past this by now. you know,
that gets really old, right? I mean,
it, it, it does, yeah. And it's like,
it's
come
time
on,
to move off
here it
this
is.
stuff. There's too
Yeah.
much too much literature out there now within the last 10 to 20 years to keep hanging on to things that are
Mhm.
just whatever.
Yep.
Or at least if you still want to lean towards the more traditional, albeit at times incorrect, at least be open, right? And
Hmm.
at least be open and receptive to the newer interpretations that are out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Cool.
I do have one coming up here in the next couple weeks that is part Eastern theater and part Western theater. So
Hmm.
it's gonna be a long one. But
Yeah.
I'm interested to get into that because it's a topic that honestly I don't really know a whole lot about. Um, so I'm not gonna reveal too much on it at the moment, but maybe after it's all finished and it's out, and I can tell
Yeah.
you what it was. But
Well,
yeah,
can you say if it is a unit that fights in both, or is it a commander that fights in both?
it's a person. Yeah.
Person. Okay.
Yeah. And one that does not, I feel like, does not have a lot out on him.
Okay.
So I feel like this is a needed work. I haven't read it yet. I won't get the manuscript here for a bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm looking forward just to learning more because this person I feel like has an important role to play at
Hmm.
certain places out here in the West,
Okay.
or a place out here in the West. So just kind of leave it at that.
Okay.
So
All right. We
yeah,
keep talking,
so
you're going to give it away. So
I know.
we're going to get
Some
down
people are
to it.
like, "Okay, who's East and West? Who is that A place?" Yeah, so
Yeah.
someone's
Right.
gonna figure it out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could probably drill down here a little bit and figure
Mhm.
it out.
Yeah,
So,
not too many.
yeah.
So, I guess we're looking at early fall, late summer of 1862 here for Augusta, right?
Yeah, actually, it is the summer is just concluded. It
Mhm,
is the week after summer has ended. It is the skirmish action engagement battle, whatever you'd like to call it. It's not very large, so it's probably a battle is too strong. It takes place on September 27th of 1862. It kicks off about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and Augusta, for geographical reference for our listeners, it is 43 miles upriver, maybe it's 44, 45, 45 miles approximately upriver from Cincinnati.
mhm,
It is a river town. Um, it's not the seat of Bracken County at the time, but is the largest and still is the largest town in Bracken County, Kentucky. Um, Many of the folks that reside there are actually of German stock because these are guys and families coming out of Pennsylvania, coming down the river. They're not the folks that are coming up through Cumberland Gap per se,
Mhm.
or Pound Gap or whatever. So these folks are mostly German. It was a huge wine producing region prior to the Civil War. I want to say it's like the third largest in the United States.
Really?
Tobacco exported out of there, of course. Some other crops, not heavy with slaves in that area at all, very few.
Mhm.
But I can say that a whopping total of 4 citizens voted for one Abraham Lincoln in the 1860 election.
That's
Four
better than a
citizens.
lot of other places in Kentucky.
Yeah, out of about a thousand, I think, voters,
Uh-huh.
if I remember correctly, about 1,000 voters in the county. So
So
four.
were they Douglas, Breckinridge, or
They were
Bell?
Bell. They were
Bell.
Bell.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't go native Breckinridge. They didn't go Stephen Douglas, and yeah, they went with Bell. That kind of, Bell is that safe vote for
Uh-huh.
middle
Yeah.
of the road type folks,
Yep.
particularly in the South. It was kind of a safe vote, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so not a lot of slaves in the area. It is a very hilly and ravine cut type of county, so farms aren't very large. So there's really not that much of a need for many slaves in that particular area, because most of the farms are small and handled
Mhm.
by usually the farmer and his immediate family. So,
Mhm.
but it's an interesting place. Of course, it has river ties to Cincinnati, so it very strong ties then going all the way down to the Mississippi River, right?
Mhm.
So it's exporting, like I said, wine, uh, and tobacco products and whatnot, or tobacco, and that's reaching all the way down to New Orleans. So it's got a little bit of a reach there. It sits in a floodplain. So it's you've got about 125-foot hills above it that overlook the town. As a matter of fact, that's where their cemetery is located. One of their cemeteries is located up on the hill. It's called Hillside Cemetery, and that's a steep sucker. I will not lie. Folks who I've been on tours with, and you think I walk you to death like at Perryville or other places like that, I would not even fathom to have you walk up the hillside. It's about a 45-degree hill. And that's not an exaggeration. It is a steep sucker. I've walked up
But
and
you're
down it
climbing
myself,
that.
looking for veterans and whatnot, cleaning stones
Uh-huh.
and whatnot there. But Augusta today is only has a population of about 1,200 people. Um, it has ties to prehistoric Indians. Um, it's the where George Clooney, the actor, went to high school,
Oh,
because
yeah.
his parents live in Augusta. They're still both alive. His father Nick was a radio and TV personality here in Cincinnati for a number of years, and so it's got that tie to it. As a matter of fact, I think George's stepsister, she still lives in Augusta as well.
That's
Um,
cool.
so it's got a little bit of that going on. Very small independent school. I think K through 12 has less than 200 students. It might even be less than that. So it's a very small town.
Yeah.
The riverfront street called Riverside is beautiful. It's got some pre-Civil War houses along it. As a matter of fact, when I do tours there, I always try to talk about a lot of the housing as well. It is the paternal, no, it's the ancestral home of George C. Marshall of the Marshall Plan, Chief of
Oh,
Staff
that's
during
that's
World
cool.
War
Yeah.
II. He himself was not born there. His parents are from there. Um, he has a brother that died in youth, and his brother's buried there. And then the family moved to Pennsylvania, and that's where George was born, in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
But the house is still there. It's called Whitehall. That's where the ancestral home of where he's from. So it's kind of a unique little place to go. For those who've never been there, I highly recommend going to the Beehive Restaurant. Overlooks the river. Just fantastic food and service. There's some other good restaurants there in town as well. Um, but so Augusta, so why even Augusta? So we'll talk about Cynthiana maybe tonight or maybe on another podcast. The first Battle of Cynthiana that takes place, and it's about 25 miles, maybe it's a little bit more, as the crow flies
Mhm.
from Augusta, and it's the culminating event of the First Kentucky Raid. Right, so Morgan comes in, he leaves Sparta, Tennessee on July 4th of 1862. He does his first Kentucky raid, with about 900 or 1,000 men. It's a very successful raid. This is Morgan in 62. You and I have talked about this, like his sophomore year, his sophomore season was pretty
Yeah.
darn good. He only has the one setback in Lebanon, the Lebanon races during 62. Everything else that he touches in 62 is pretty favorable.
Yeah.
And so the first Kentucky raid is really successful. It lasts for about 24 days, about 1,000 miles of riding. He recruits about 100 guys, but it's really more of just disruption, right? It's not like, he shuts down the railroad for weeks at a time or whatever the case may be, but it is a very successful raid in terms of just morale,
Mhm.
in terms of just creating havoc in the rear. Um, some of the Bracken County Home Guard will actually fight at Cynthiana. I actually have a roster of them provided by the folks at Frankfort, Kentucky, which is interesting because I recognized a lot of those names even before I got the roster. Last names, family names, of course.
Mhm.
And so, Morgan gets back out of the state really with very little Union pursuit whatsoever. And then, of course, it's Morgan who kind of pushes, he kind of tips um, the decision of the Confederates to do something, right, going north.
Yeah.
And he sends that infamous or famous telegram to Edmund Kirby Smith on July 16th of 1862. About 25,000 to 30,000 men will rise up, blah, 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 blah.
We're just waiting.
And 1/10 of that's what actually happens. But
Yeah.
it's not just Morgan. You've got Kentucky families, prominent families, and politicians. They're clamoring for support as well. But that's that tipping point, right? That
Yeah.
leads to the Perryville or Kentucky or Heartland campaign, whatever you'd like to call that. So when that's taking place, Morgan is still attached to Kirby Smith's command. Um, but Morgan, John H. Morgan, will be detailed off to get in the front or the retreat of George Washington Morgan from Cumberland Gap. And that starts to take place in mid September. So Morgan takes a large portion of the command that he has and tries to get in front of George Washington Morgan. So that's another topic of conversation with
Yeah.
somebody
That
as well.
story is just
Yeah,
that's
the
an epic
masterful
story.
retreat, right? The masterful retreat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but what's left behind is Basil Duke, which of course is Morgan's brother-in-law. Um, and Basil Duke has the majority of the Second Kentucky Cavalry with him, which is, of course, Morgan's original regiment. He's got the old squadron in there that he had at
Mhm.
Shiloh. And so Basil Duke has most of those men. And Smith will detail Duke into northern Kentucky. Smith has pulled back Henry Heath by this point from northern Kentucky, knowing that he could not take the city. Heath's got about 6 to 8,000 men, depending on what source you look at, but he pulls back to Eagle Creek, which is about midway between northern Kentucky and Lexington. But he sends Basil Duke north, and there's some other elements as well. Um, what's the WCP Breckenridge, I think, is up there,
Yeah.
which will later become a regimental commander under Morgan, and a couple other guys as well. But Duke will be engaged, basically just watching what's going on for the Union side, trying to do recruiting, of course, and then he'll base himself mostly around Falmouth, Kentucky, but he'll also launch a little bit of a mini raid 2 days before Augusta and capture a large portion of the 18th Michigan Infantry at a place called Snow's Pond. And this takes place on September 25th. So um, Duke operating out of Falmouth, he'll take the Second Kentucky Cav. They'll ride on the 25th, the morning of the 25th, or overnight on the 24th, 25th. Get it to Snow's Pond. They intersect the road, and they've got the 18. They're between two fires. They're between two Union forces, but Duke pretty much knows that the Union cavalry is very ineffective. And so again, he kind of does one of these ruse kind of things, which Morgan himself is kind of famous for, and convinces a big chunk of the 18th Michigan to surrender to him. That's the Snow's Pond on the 25th.
So who are those guys? What were they even doing there? The 18th Michigan.
Well, you're pulling troops down, right? So you had
Mhm.
the big scare into Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is having all these forces poured into it, right?
Mhm.
Like just tons of them, whatever they could get. So these, they're almost all green regiments. They're all these
Right.
late summer 1862 regiments, right? The 300,000 more. And so a lot of these guys are in the defenses of Cincinnati or helping to build those defenses of Cincinnati. And then some of them, many of them are detailed down to Louisville when Louisville becomes threatened and the threat to Cincinnati has dissipated. So the 18th Michigan's just rushed down, like many other troops, right? Are just rushed to the front, thinking that Cincinnati might be seriously threatened. And so that's why those Michigan boys are there. And again, a big chunk of them are captured. And it's right along, it's US 25. It's the old alignment of US 25. There is a Snows Pond historical marker, or at least there was last time I was there, on New 25. But the pond and the original alignment is about a quarter mile to the east.
Okay.
So Duke has pulled this off. He will retreat immediately back to Falmouth. Now, again, this is a good probably 20 miles one direction. And I don't have my map up, so I really should be doing this a little more accurately. So he's ridden from Falmouth to Snows Pond, captured a bunch of troops, paroles them, retreats back to Falmouth, and makes a decision. He's getting reports, right? Because one of the things that Morgan's command does very well is send out like scouts, right? Try to figure out what's going on, and little scouting parties all over the place. Well, one of those scouting parties will scout around Augusta. There's a ford 1 mile downriver from Augusta, and one of these Confederate scouting parties has reported back to Duke that hey, there's this ability to potentially cross the Ohio River. So
Yeah.
Duke gets it in his mind that he might be able to actually cross the Ohio River. Also, Duke hears that there is a new Union command, a new Union regiment that's going to be formed from the home guard of Bracken County, or part of the home guard of Bracken County, and he wants to break up that formation as well. So he figures, well, from Falmouth, I'll go to Augusta. Again, probably 25 miles. So
Yeah.
they'll ride all night, the night of the 26th, and go to Augusta, Kentucky.
So is this still the up and down sort of terrain?
Oh, yeah,
God,
absolutely.
that must have been rough on those horses.
Absolutely. And you're not talking about macadamized pikes either, right?
Right. Yeah, this
At
is
least very few, right? Very few. So you're talking about, pretty rocky gravelly roads. Now they're all dry and dusty because we're in the middle of the drought. So they're super dry and dusty, but yeah, I've driven. It's Kentucky 22 from Falmouth to Brooksville. And that's a hilly, windy, because it's up on top of a ridge. Like it's, that Kentucky Ridge Road, right? It just winds and curves and curves and winds. And then from there, you can it's a Kentucky 19, goes from Brooksville to Augusta. That is a little better, quote unquote, but it's still very rolling.
yeah,
This is much
yeah,
more so than Perryville, like much more rolling than Perryville.
right. Yeah, I'm looking at on the map here and just
Mhm.
the satellite view of it, and
Yeah.
man, that terrain is rough.
Yeah. So Duke really pulls together. Again, he has this movement on the 25th, the Snows Pond, retreats to Falmouth, then gets some more word back that, I could break up this Union formation. I might even be able to cross the Ohio River. He's
Mhm.
got he's got the 2 6-pounder bullpups with him. Many folks will confuse that too. A lot of folks think that they're 12-pounders. They're not 12-pounders. They're 6-pounder bullpups. The effective range of about 800 yards. He has that section of guns with him.
Mhm.
So he'll take about 600-ish men of the 2nd Kentucky Cavalry and the pair of 6-pounder mountain howitzers, the bullpups, and he's going to ride to Augusta. So they do this overnight on the 26th, and they will arrive on the heights overlooking Augusta again about noon or 1 o'clock on the afternoon of September 27th. Now, what's in Augusta on the Union side, or the defenders, are about 125, 150 home guard. And these guys are being drilled, and they're being trained by a local doctor, a very noted doctor. Dr. Oh my gosh, his first name just totally went out of my head, which is terrible. Joshua Bradford. Well, Bradford's definitely the last name. That's just terrible. He's a noted surgeon. He had actually been recruited by hospitals in Cincinnati. He was a specialist, much like the gentleman that's based out of Danville. A lot of exploratory type of surgery. That guy's name is eluding me now as well, which is terrible. But the hospital is even named after that guy in Danville. So again, just blows my mind. But this doctor's he doesn't get he doesn't go. He wants to keep practicing in Augusta. He will serve actually as a surgeon on Bull Nelson's staff during the Ivy Mountain campaign, and will continue to serve. Bradford will continue to serve with Nelson through Shiloh.
Really?
And he actually has a few words about Nelson as well. They had run-ins. They were friends, but they had run-ins as well.
Yeah.
And Bradford at one point basically, makes a comment about, well, if I had a gun, I'd shoot you right now, like that sort of thing. They had
Which
this
happened
love-hate
eventually, yeah.
relationship, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that happened to Nelson eventually,
yeah, it
huh?
happened a lot. Bradford will take ill in that swampy area in North Mississippi during the Corinth campaign. He'll come back home.
Mhm.
And so he is going to be made a colonel of a new Kentucky infantry regiment on the federal side. So he's starting to train some of these Home Guard guys, and he's going to use them, I think, probably as the core of this regiment as it
Right.
trains up. So,
So
yes.
are these home guard guys, I mean, do they know that they're going to be made the core of a new regiment, or are
Yes,
they
most of
just
them
sort
are. As a matter of fact, one of them, there's a story. The problem with Augusta is there are a lot of stories, but
Uh-huh.
it's very hard to prove some of these stories.
Right.
One of the stories is that there's a guy that's even drilling with the Home Guard that very morning. He's a Southern sympathizer, and allegedly it's his birthday. And he says, "By gosh, I'm not gonna be part of this regiment, and it's my birthday, and I don't have to drill." And he leaves the command, like he just leaves, which is kind of funny. Again, it's only in like one source, quote unquote source. That's the thing about Augusta. The locals, and God love them all. The locals will hang on to these things as like their truths, but I'm working on. I've been working on for years now. The Snows Pond Augusta Brookville book, and I'm disproving some of this just by common sense. But
Yeah.
I will tell the stories because I think they are funny stories or
Oh, yeah. I mean,
cool
those
stories.
local legends,
That's right.
yeah, hard
That's
to
right.
kill sometimes.
Absolutely. So I think these guys are realizing that, yeah, they're going to muster in. They're going to wind up serving. Um, and so
So
they're
but
training. They are
they're
actually
just not in officially yet, right?
they're not mustered in at all. And
Okay,
again,
so
they've only got the equivalent of about two companies. Now Bradford
okay.
will get word that the Confederates are on the move. He will send out pickets and send out. He actually has a small mounted force that he'll send out,
Mhm.
which has really no play other than to confuse the gunboats that are at
Uh-huh.
Augusta. But I'll talk about that here in a second. And they're training in the common area or the green or whatever you'd like to call it in Augusta in the morning, and there are three gunboats, three Union gunboats on the river that are patrolling this section of river. Now, when I say
Are
gunboats, these
these
are go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to ask what kind of so are these like
They
the
are
Indian
wooden
class or
sided. For the most part, I think all three of them are stern wheelers,
okay.
and they have a one row of hay for armor. So it's just wooden planks
Interesting. Yeah.
with one row of hay for armor. One of the boats has a 12-pounder howitzer on. Actually, I think two of them do. Have a single 12-pounder howitzer. In the weeks leading up, there were supposed to be men from the 106th Ohio. It's a German regiment from Cincinnati that were to be detailed and trained up as gunners for these
Mhm.
guns. Right. So a 12-pounder howitzer takes a crew of about seven,
Yeah.
7 to 9 ballparkish, right? You can probably get away with a couple less. Um, in one cruise, I have the names of I think 7 or 9 of the Germans that were supposed to train as a gunboat crew. Four of them will wind up deserting. Three of them will absolutely refuse to be trained on the gun. So it's hilarious. It's like all these things are going on. Um, and so they had very little training on the 12-pounder howitzer. Now on the main boat, um, the Belfast, the why am I getting that? Yeah, the Belfast. Um, the one of the Navy crew is an old Prussian artillerist from the wars prior. He comes over.
Interesting.
So he will actually him and one other man will serve the gun. Now, how effective is a two-man crew on a 12-pounder howitzer?
It's
Uh,
gonna take a while to load that thing,
that's right.
and, I mean, I
Absolutely.
can imagine having to swab it, and then, you're plugging the hole at the same time
Yeah.
with one guy. I mean,
Yeah.
one guy's going to be standing there plugging the hole. Someone else is going to be doing the work the entire time. So
That's right.
that
That's
is
right.
going to be some slow fire right there.
Yeah. So there are 3 gunboats in the immediate area: the Belfast, the Alice Dean. I'm saying that wrong. Alice Miller, the
Yeah,
Florence
Alice
Miller, and
Dean.
the Alice Dean is also involved down at Brandenburg, right?
Right. Yeah, Alice
Right.
Dean was kind of down here in
I'm gonna
Owensboro,
have
that
it's not
area.
the
Yeah,
Alice Dean, then it's the
yeah.
Alan Collier. That's what it is. That's why I'm getting my names mixed up a little bit. Again, I really should pull up my materials so I can give accurate information here. So that mounted force that Bradford had sent out on a scout, they're going to wind up crossing at that ford that's 1 mile below Augusta. And the gunboats see clouds of dust down there and think it's Duke's men crossing. So the Allen Collier, which again has one 12-pounder howitzer on it as well, will go down. It'll leave. It'll head downriver. All right. So now we're down to 2 gunboats.
Mhm.
Um, but Bradford has organized what he calls a brick and mortar type of defense. And I think he gets this idea because some of these home guard had served at Cynthiana July prior. And what they'd done at Cynthiana was they basically held themselves up, took positions in brick and stone buildings, and fired at Morgan's men from relatively safe positions.
Yeah.
And so that's the plan for Bradford and the home guard as well. It's like, we will let the gunboats shell them until the Confederates come into town. My home guard will be in these various buildings, mostly on the second floor. They are carrying what was called an inferior musket. I'm assuming it's probably like a model 1842 or even a model 1816.
Yeah. The
But
lot of those were in the militia
yes,
use, those
yeah, a lot
1860.
of those are that way. But so smoothbores, right?
Mhm.
I think they're all percussion cap by this point, but they're going to be firing down at Confederates at a very short range. I literally stand in front of like one house and I go, right there's a guy shooting down at you, probably shooting buck and ball.
That's gonna do some damage.
It's going to do some damage, whether I'm trained or not, whether I have a superior rifled musket or not. That's going to do some damage. And so
Yeah. I
this
mean,
is
can't
so the,
you can't crap on buck and ball a whole lot. I know
no,
people like to think, the mini is the best, but the buck and ball is just outdated, and
yeah.
it's
You're
up close.
talking,
It is
these are
not
going to be
outdated.
ranges of less than a few yards,
Right.
right? This is
It's
what this is going
perfect
to
for
be.
that.
And I'm shooting down at you. So this is going
Yeah.
to have some impact. So then when the Confederates pour into town, then the gunboats are going to switch over to shrapnel, canister, and they're going to sweep the streets, right? This is the plan. Many of the citizens will jump on the Florence Miller. Many of the citizens will hide themselves in the basements, right? So they're not in the way of all this canister and whatnot.
Mhm.
Well, that's the plan. So Duke pulls up. He brings his command. Again, 650 men or so, the 2nd Kentucky Cavalry. Pulls up. Um, will go ahead and unlimber one of the bullpups, actually both bullpups, and they will start to fire at the gunboats. Okay. So you got 6-pounder mountain howitzer shooting at the gunboats. Again, the gunboats are literally just a wooden planked vessel with a row of hay around some of the more important areas,
Uh-huh.
but not around the boiler. Now, any of us who've ever studied anything about steamboats, whether
That
it is under attack or just a boiler explosion, the boilers are extremely important. And so about 1 o'clock or so, the gunboats and the bullpups will start to exchange a few rounds. The gunboats get the first one in. They overshoot the hill. They get their second round in, which actually lands amongst the crew of one of the bullpups and causes some casualties. And then the bullpups start to find their range. First, they're 20 or 30 yards in the water, and the round splashes into the Ohio River. Then the next one gets a little closer, and now they're starting to hit the gunboats. There is testimony at a court-martial proceeding, which I'll get to here in a little bit, that rounds were actually striking the gunboats. And so now you have undercrewed guns on the gunboats. You have gunboats that are basically, let me not forget this. They are piloted by civilian captains. So these are
I'm assuming they don't
civilian
wanna be in the middle of
gunboats.
that, do they?
Sorry,
I'm assuming they don't wanna be in the middle of that, those
they don't
civilian
want to be in the middle of
pilots.
that. No, they
Yeah.
once they realize that these bullpups can do damage to their boats, they leave.
Yeah.
Now, some folks will say they were cowards. I don't think they were. I think they're actually intelligent, and it comes through in a lot of it in the testimony. Some of the crew on the boats are testifying like, yeah, we had holes coming through the boat. If one of those rounds had struck the boiler, it would have exploded when it had steam all throughout the boat, scalding the entire crew.
Uh-huh.
There's also Company A of the 2nd Kentucky Cavalry had been dispatched, and they charge down the hill, and they go out to a sandbar where the Bracken Creek flows into the Ohio River today, which is basically where the big boat launch is, in that general area, in Augusta today. There's a park and a boat launch there. In that area, they walk out onto the sandbar because, again, it's a drought, right?
Yeah, that's a
Very
low
low
river.
water.
Yeah.
They walk out to the sandbar and start lighting up these boats as they are going upriver. The one boat counts about 100 mini ball holes in the boat. So these captains flee and they go up river to Ripley. Both captains will be brought up on court-martial charges.
You
One
know,
of
there's
them is found guilty and sentenced to 6 months of hard labor until his attorney says, "Oh, by the way, he's a civilian. You can't try him by court-martial."
right.
And they
Yeah,
have
that's
to throw
what I
that.
was wondering.
They have to throw it out.
Yeah.
But the reading the testimony alone is interesting as all get out.
Mhm.
I really have enjoyed it, and I know it's a weird thing to enjoy, but you see, like, oh, those leading citizens said, "Oh, I was prominently on the bow," and you da, and then the crew of the gunboats are like, "Yeah, that dude was hiding behind the forecastle, right? Like he was
Yeah.
nowhere around, right?"
Yeah.
Or some of these quote unquote trained German gunners. Well, did you fire your musket? Well, I fired my musket once or twice, but I missed hit on the other side of the boat, or I didn't fire at all. Or so
Yeah.
it's just hilarious. By the way, the 106, they haven't even mustered into service yet. They don't muster into service until after this. So they're not
Wow.
even mustered into service. Now, the 106 may sound familiar to those of us who also know a little bit about Hartsville, because the
Mhm.
106 is at Hartsville as well.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, they get a little bit of these couple of squads of
The
detached.
bad reputation begins at Augusta for them,
A
doesn't it?
little bit. I don't think a lot
Yeah.
of people know that, but a little bit, right? So it's pretty funny. So anyway, the gunboats are now being driven off. So Duke is going to send a couple additional companies into the heart of town. I think it's companies B and C. He'll send them right into the heart of town, and they'll go dismounted, smartly dismounted.
Mhm.
They'll go clamoring into town, and they will run into resistance. And the advance guard, which is Company C, which is up there by the sandbar, will hear this firing going on in town. Now, Duke has given clear instructions to his command to fight dismounted, because again, he was present at First Indiana, and
Mhm.
knowing that mounted troops is charging up and down the street where the defenders are in stone and brick houses is not a good thing.
Yeah, he knows what can happen.
Yeah, he knows what can happen. He's experienced it. He's seen it firsthand, and so he gives orders to
Right.
make sure that, hey, when you go into town, yeah, get to the outskirts on be mounted, but dismount, move in. Well, unfortunately, Company A goes barreling down, which is basically Riverside Drive today, from the sandbar towards the heart of town, mounted. And one of the Confederate gunners assumes they are Union because no Confederate should be mounted in the heart of town. And there's a blue on blue. One of the officers, Greenberry Roberts, will be killed by friendly fire from one of the bullpups up on the hillside. Well,
Wow.
companies B and C they've launched in. You're about to ask a question, so I'll stop.
Yeah, I gonna ask, so is this, I'm actually looking at the Google Street View of all this, and I'm down
Yes.
on right now I'm down on Riverside,
Yes. So
and I'm
Riverside was
located.
called Front Street or Water Street during the
Okay.
Civil War. So that's Riverside. Now, Riverside, if you go upriver, it used to go all the way up. It doesn't any longer because the way the river has been
Uh-huh.
kind of rerouted and dammed and whatnot. But it used to
Yeah.
continue up, um, well, all the way up towards basically where you see the park. It
Mhm.
used to carry pretty much all the way up that way. And so Greenberry Roberts will Company A will come barreling down from upriver, downriver, but they're coming right down river, what is now Riverside.
So are
Also, keep in mind that what you're looking at there, if you see Parkview
okay,
Avenue that was the main street.
okay,
What
'cause
you
I'm
see
looking
as
at
Main
Main
Street
Street.
today was
Okay,
not the
yeah,
main street. So there were
it's the
Parkview is actually the main street,
next block over. Okay.
next block over. Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you give me a
Because
view
it
of that?
goes around the green where the courthouse used to be and where the jail was located. The jail is still there. You can take tours of the jail.
Yeah.
There's a swimming pool there too, modern amenity. But that
Yeah.
was the green. That was like the heart of town. And so
There's some
companies
beautiful
B
old
and C
houses.
will come charging in. I think it's company B that will actually go down Main Street, the
Uh-huh.
historic Main Street. And then they'll come barreling around onto Riverside. And there's a bunch of businesses and a bunch of the home guard are up in those buildings. And so companies B and C are having issues. They cannot make headway. They can't get into the buildings. They're getting shot down. Um, Duke will lose a lot of junior grade officers during this particular fight. Some lieutenants, second lieutenants, um, a captain as well. Maybe it's couple captains, I believe. So he's going to lose like some junior grade officers, which I think has a little bit of an impact, of course, on the Second Kentucky Cavalry.
Yeah.
So
Especially
Duke
American.
is
Yeah.
getting frustrated. He'll start to bring up one of the bullpups and deploy in town. So he's going to start just firing point blank range to try to disrupt these home guard guys. And so what'll start to happen is in one building, white flags will go up. Like, oh, we're surrender, right? But in the building next to them, the guys are still shooting. Sometimes this happens within the same building at different windows. So Duke is getting really pissed off about all this stuff. Well, finally, the home guard will wind up across town. Finally, the home guard will wind up surrendering. But in the meantime, um, a fire has broken out. Now, this is probably from a shell, but there's also some talk about this was intentionally done to drive these guys out of these buildings. And Augusta will lose 20 buildings in town. You can still see that impact today. There are still lots in town where you see a more modern structure, and
Yep.
there was a building there that burned down. Right next to the Rosemary Clooney Museum there on Riverside, by the way. There's between where the caboose is today,
Uh-huh.
like the little visitor caboose they have there in the heart, right along the river. There's a modern house right between the caboose and the Rosemary Clooney house. The Rosemary Clooney house is a wartime structure. It was the Dilts home. The Diltses were Southern sympathizers, but there's a more modern house right between. And you can see some empty lots as you continue to go upriver along Riverside, where there were houses there that were burned down during the fighting. So 20
Yeah.
houses will burn down. Some of the home guard, and I think a couple local citizens were burned alive in these fires
Oh,
that were set. I'm leaning towards set. And
uh-huh.
it's a good way to drive people out, right?
Oh,
Set
yeah.
some
Yeah.
fires. And
Yep.
and Morgan will do the same thing in 1864 at the Second Battle of Cynthiana, where Cynthiana will lose over 30 buildings of their downtown. And you can still see that today.
Yeah.
So eventually now the home guard guys are going to start surrendering, right? And so they do, bit by bit, house by house, whatever the case may be. But again, like I said, Duke has lost some guys, right? And so there's one story, and the building is still there. It's another Dilts house, but it's a brother. It's not the same Dilts. Right in the heart of town, right on what is modern Main Street, where one of the Confederate officers, I'll get this order incorrect, so you have to bear with me a little bit. There's a Confederate officer that's trying to rush into the first floor door, and he is shot down, and he calls out. And then so another officer who is his friend will come rushing up to try to help him. He's gunned down. And then a quote unquote old man of the company, Creed T. Puckett. I only have to look his name up. Creed T. Puckett will rush up to help save or help his beloved officers, and he'll be gunned down. All three of those men are buried in Cynthiana, Kentucky. Captain Whip Rogers, he actually was not a captain. He was a first lieutenant, but basically an acting captain. He was in charge of the company. He's buried in the old Pioneer Cemetery in Cynthiana because his father was from Cynthiana, was a circuit preacher in the area. Creed T. Puckett, and I cannot think of the other officer's name off the top of my head. They're both buried in Battle Grove Cemetery in the Confederate section where there's 43 stones in a circle around
Is it where that monument is?
where that monument's located.
Okay.
It's the third oldest Confederate monument in the United States, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So those guys are buried there because they were, taken back when Duke will eventually retreat. Well, after this surrender, Duke has taken some casualties, probably 20 or 30-ish, right? Doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not insignificant there
but it's
for one
several
regiment.
officers, right?
Uh-huh.
And then the home guard has lost about 15 or 18 guys. Several of them have been burned alive. There are two guys that share one stone up in Hillside Cemetery. Some of them, like I said, have been burned alive. The fires are put out, but Duke realizes he's not going to be able to cross the river now. The gunboats have fled, but he has fired up most of his artillery ammunition. And his intent to he does break up the formation of that regiment. By the way, that regiment never forms, so that was successful. Um, he will pull some supplies and some horses and some wagons out of town, so he gets a little bit of a resupply from that point of view. But he can't cross the river because his bullpups are very low on ammunition, and he wasn't going to do much once he got into Ohio. And he's got 600 guys, and Cincinnati's got thousands of troops. But his goal was to try to get some of these troops to pull out of northern Kentucky to help continue to recruit and just throw Cincinnati into a panic.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
anytime you can throw them into a panic,
yeah,
that helps you.
yeah,
It's
but he couldn't
uh,
cross.
yeah,
And I don't think he would have gotten very far, even if he had, because a few regiments of Union infantry probably would have slowed him up. And that's a what if, you never know.
right.
But again, there are thousands of Union troops in the region, so there's him with 600 men or so aren't going to do a lot other than throw a scare, right? Put a scare in them.
Mhm.
But he can't do that, and so he hangs out in town for a few more hours, and then they will retreat, and they're going to head back to Falmouth. But by this point, he's gotten some word that there's some Union movement going around in northern Kentucky, so he'll actually change course and head to Cynthiana. Along the route in Bracken County, there are some unknown Confederates buried along the way in a couple of the cemeteries along the way. Don't have names specifically documented for these guys. I have probably the most comprehensive list of Confederate wounded and killed. I have pulled every source I can find, including a limited book called Morgan's Light Brigade. It was written by a husband and wife team a few years back that lists basically 3,000 to 4,000 men that served with Morgan's command. I've gone through every record I can grab, and so I have a pretty complete list. So, um, I can tell you with generality, like, well, it could be this guy or it could be that guy. Allegedly, there are 8 guys still buried at the Payne Cemetery in Augusta, and they put up a Confederate monument there in the early 1800s. The money was raised locally by a former Confederate guy. His last name is Bradley. As a matter of fact, his stone is not that far away from the Confederate monument there in Augusta. And allegedly, 8 guys are buried there. And I say allegedly because there's also a story that when Cynthiana was trying to complete its circle, that they came and dug up some Confederates from Augusta and moved them to Cynthiana. What I call bumkus on that, because why would you need to complete a circle in that manner? If you
Spread
have
them out a
X
little
number
more.
of guys, you just put that X number of guys in a circle.
Yeah,
Secondarily, that circle has 43 guys. That's an odd number.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me. I think those 8 are probably still there, maybe a couple more. But there are also a handful buried along the retreat route. Duke will go back to Cynthiana. He'll hang out in Cynthiana for a bit, and then he'll finally pull back and rejoin with Morgan's command because John, by that point, has pretty much been exasperated in his events to slow down the 7th Division under George Washington Morgan as they do their masterful retreat from Cumberland Gap to Greenupsburg, Kentucky. So the aftermath is, there's a financial impact to Augusta. Again, like I said, 20 large buildings, homes have been burned down. There are a lot of little stories that go along with that, of course. Duke does break up that formation of that federal regiment, but he can't get across the river. And that's
Uh-huh.
really it for Augusta. In 1864, Morgan gets close. As a matter of fact, he will recruit men. I haven't figured this out. I think I might have even talked about this. He's recruiting guys after being defeated at Second Cynthiana. He's been scattered by Burbridge. Ooh, I said
Mhm.
a bad word. by
Like
Burbridge, right?
Mears just
It's
burned
been
a little bit.
scattered,
Yeah.
and there are guys that are joining the 7th Kentucky Mounted Battalion the day after the Second Battle of Cynthia is concluded from southern Bracken County. It's so weird. Um,
Yeah. Wonder what they knew about what had happened within
I
those
I
couple
I
days
don't
before.
know. They're not that terribly far away. Word
Right.
travels, relatively fast. Somebody's got a horse, they could definitely spread it. Maybe they didn't know it all, or maybe they're just fed up with everything. We're
Yeah.
talking 1864. We know what happens in
Some
Kentucky in
things are starting to
64.
get weird up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the home guard that surrendered, are they
Mhm.
paroled or are they taken
Yeah.
prisoner along with
Great
Duke?
question. Many of them are taken as prisoners. And the very next morning, this is the morning of September 28th, Duke is still in the little town of Brooksville, which is the county seat of Bracken County. And the Federals are closing in. There are some scattered organizations, including part of the 45th Ohio Infantry and some Kentucky Federal Cavalry units that are closing in. They've been like gathering around Maysville and Germantown, and they're gathering together, and they are moving towards Brooksville, trying to get to the Confederates. And Duke has sent most of his command on, like, moving on. And he's got like 50 guys with him on the morning of the 28th. And they're signing paroles. They're doing some paroles. And they're doing paroles mostly, or they're also releasing some of the more southern leaning guys that were in the Home Guard. But they'll take about 100 prisoners with them, including some of the leading citizens of Augusta. Now, eventually, those guys will be let go once they get to pretty much Lexington. They'll be let go at that particular point. But yeah, he's doing some paroling, and he's almost captured. Some of the Kentucky boys, the Union Kentucky boys, get a little eager and launch a charge a little too soon, a little too premature. Otherwise, they had a real chance of potentially capturing that particular point. Yeah, he only got 50 guys with him, and there are several hundred Union troops closing in on that
Mhm.
town.
So for Duke, we always tend to think that Duke is the guy that Morgan desperately needed with him.
Mhm.
So how would you grade Duke's performance here, going through, from this area of Kentucky up to Augusta and back, and then how this whole thing ends?
I think I have to give him probably like a solid B. His maneuvering around and the capture of a chunk of the 18th Michigan at Snow's Pond is pretty bold. As a matter of fact, he basically has 10 guys that are demanding surrender of the large portion of the 18th. And because fortuitously, a large chunk of the Confederate cavalry happens to ride up just at the right time. Otherwise, these Michigan guys are going, yeah, there's like 10 of you. Oh no, there's hundreds coming up. And luckily Duke rides up with kind of like another advanced guard. So there's a lot of dust and whatnot. So that works out pretty well. He gets back to Falmouth without any hindrances. He does this overnight march to Augusta, breaks up the formation of that regiment. Um, Again, I don't know how realistic it would have been to get across the Ohio River or how much he could have done across the Ohio River. But his handling of troops in Augusta proper is a little haphazard. He could have thrown his whole force in. He didn't. There are several other companies up on the hill. They'll eventually get dispatched to go into town. But I think he underestimates the resistance of the Home Guard, even though he has seen this very thing in July. In July of 62 at Cynthiana, which is the reason why he knew to have his men dismounted. Um, and then again, he'll have to retreat, right? So is it successful? Yeah, I mean, it stirs up things, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It stirs up things a little bit. So I think it's a fairly a B for me in this
Yeah.
aspect. The old adage, and I think we've talked about this before, if you knock John Morgan on the head, it's Basil Duke's brains that fall, right? And
Yep.
Duke definitely has the respect, and he understands discipline, and he's learning tactics as well. And so, I think him and um, Grenville, like those are the two guys that are like in 62, those are the two guys. Like those are the guys that are driving the changes within Morgan's command. They're mounted infantry, using some of the mounted infantry tactics from the War of 1812 and the Mexican-American War. Of course, Grenville has had numerous services, basically as a mercenary, with the British Army and other aspects. So he's got knowledge, right? And so, it's to Morgan's credit that Morgan allows this to happen within his command. But it's Duke and it's Grenville that really drives it. And we really see this because Grenville is not in the 1863 raid. He's pissed off
Right.
because of your boy, Adam Rankin Johnson, gets command of the
Uh-huh.
brigade. Um, and then, of course, Duke is captured at Buffington Island. And so Duke is not with him during the 1864 last Kentucky raid. And that is a nightmare from a discipline perspective.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, Duke, people who know Duke give him credit. And I think his credit is mostly deserved.
So what did so in like reporting all this to Morgan, his boss here, how does Morgan receive the news of what's happened at Snow's Pond and Augusta? I mean, or is there even any documentation that
Yeah, there's
shows?
nothing.
Yeah.
Duke is going to bubble up his reports really through the chain of command to Smith because he's operating more directly under Smith's orders than he is Morgan. Because again, Morgan's
He's out
100
of
miles or 75 miles away in the
right.
wilds of eastern Kentucky trying to chase the Federals there. So there is nothing in the official reports that really talk of that, like that Duke sends anything to Morgan and Morgan reacts or anything along those lines. I've not come across anything. It's an
Okay.
interesting aspect. I'd probably need to look harder to see if there is anything out there. But again, well, Duke will make the comment. They're in Brooksville, um, Kentucky, the seat of Bracken County, the night of the 27th. And Duke will call it like the gloomiest night because he's lost so many friends. His officers were his friends, and the command's lost so many. And this is a recurring theme too during 1863. And I am seriously like working on a John, don't call me Hunt Morgan and the not so great rate of 63 because the more I read, the less impressed I become. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of officers that are turned over, like, shot, wounded, sick, whatever that happens, that decimates Morgan's command in 63. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just the surrenders. There's a lot of things that are going on during that raid. And so I think, this is when you lose a corps of commanders. Yeah, I mean, they had guys to replace, and those guys did replace and fight on fairly well. But you talk about the advance guard in 1863, right? They go through 3 commanders in 3 days,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'll get the names wrong. Like, I know Franks is one of them, and then Hines winds up with them, and da da da. But they go through 3 commanders. They lose one down there by Maribone. They lose one the next day at Columbia, and they lose the third guy at Tebbs Bend on July 4th. And so you look at that, and you look at David Chenault getting gunned down. There's a lieutenant colonel of one of the regiments. He becomes ill and can't even complete the raid, right? And then you look at how many guys were captured at Buffington or after, right? Like
Yeah.
command structure is decimated. And I think that's the thing to a lesser extent, but that happens, I believe, at Augusta as well.
Yeah. Wow. So for Duke, do throughout the next few months and into 63, does he seem to have learned anything from his experience here at Augusta?
I'm going to say no. And the
Mm.
reason why I say that isn't anything against Basil Duke himself. But he doesn't really voice an opinion against Morgan's ideas in 63. And if anybody should have, it should have been him.
Mhm.
He probably should have stepped up and said, I don't think going across the high river is a great idea or whatever.
You've
But
got
he's
orders.
also Morgan's brother-in-law. So that, I mean,
Right.
what's their relationship like, right? It's probably more like brothers than it is officer and subordinate, commander and subordinate. And so,
Mhm.
I don't know what position that Duke would have been in, but I think he's earned by this point of the war, mid 63, he should have earned enough respect from Morgan. If he did have a dissenting view, that he should have spoken up and said, this is not a
Yeah, I
but he
agree.
doesn't, to my knowledge. Not, I've never come across anything that says he was against it. As a matter of fact, I read something once that, Duke was all for it because he hated Bragg. You know how that works, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now, and whatever, they may have disliked Bragg, and I totally understand that. But at the same point, I don't know for sure. But
Mhm.
Duke probably should have spoken up. So, what did he learn anything? Probably not.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, they continued to operate as mounted infantry and da da da. But no, I don't think he really learned anything from that lesson.
So you've mentioned it before in some other episodes, that, you've got this project here, and then
Yeah.
you kind of briefly mentioned it here earlier too. So tell us a little bit about that before
In
we
about
wrap up
20
the show here.
years, I will have this book done. Right. I've been trying to work on a book. I've not even gotten to the Augusta fight yet. Right. So I've got like a little bit of I'm trying to work on the book. I don't know if I'm going to self-publish it or try like a history press or something like that. Right. Um, on these days that Duke is in Northern Kentucky, right? So it's going to have Snow's Pond. It's going to have Augusta. It's going to have the little affair at Brooksville. By the way, I have 8,000 words on the Battle of Brooksville that saw one Confederate captured and one Federal killed in action. That's what I have, 8,000 words. It's actually on the blog for the Under the Western Theater. I am obviously not going to keep 8,000 words on a little skirmish at Brooksville, but I had just a ton of first person stuff I wanted to use, full reports, that sort. So I haven't even started writing the part on Augusta. And every now and then, like every few months, literally, I pull it out and start working on it. Right.
Yeah.
But within that, I have a full list of all the guys that were captured in the 18th Michigan. I have, like I alluded to before, probably the most complete Confederate casualties list at Augusta that anybody's tried to put together. And I don't mean that as a brag, just putting
It does
together
the
the various
research there.
sources.
Yeah.
Um, I've not been able to identify the home guard with the Tinker's Darn. There's some names, so I have probably 15, the 15 wounded, but Frankfurt did not have a list for the home guard in Augusta proper. So, which is unfortunate. That
Yeah,
would
'cause,
have
I mean, a
been
lot of these home
ideal.
guards, they would be together, and then they get disbanded, and then
Yeah,
they'd be formed just with a different name. Yeah, they
absolutely.
are very difficult to research in really any
Yeah.
depth.
And the home guard company that's at Cynthiana earlier that summer of 62, they're mostly from southern Bracken County.
Mhm.
And so I don't think many of them would be at Augusta at that particular point. So I have that full list, which is great, but I don't think it's going to help me much. Um, so I've got, the Snow's Pond port part is mostly written. I've got to do some cleanup. Then I've got to do a transition to Augusta. Then I need to write Augusta. And then I need to edit down Brooksville because 8,000 words in one chapter on Brooksville is overkill. So I know that. I
Well,
also have like a tour, like a walking and then a driving tour to add on some of the stops, which I've detailed with turn by turn directions and GPS waypoints and that sort of thing. Um, so I've got that, a huge list of resources, right? Like I've got a ton of that. But again, I'm going to tell the stories that I know. Here's a perfect example, and it's oh, now her name is eluding me. Why are these names eluding me all of a sudden? Mrs.
you got
Coburn.
so many
This is
names in the
Mary
brain.
Coburn. Mrs. Mary Coburn had a farm south of Augusta. She's up on the hill. She's up on the high ground, about a mile and a half, 2 miles, 2 miles, we'll say 2 miles south of Augusta. She writes a letter to her niece. This is shortly after the fight, so it's really relatively fresh in her mind. She'll write a letter to her niece from which she says, I saw the Confederates coming and going. Okay. That means to the battle and from the battle. That's how I interpret it. She doesn't say she was in town. But then in another letter, I think I have this right. I think it's a separate letter to her niece. A few weeks later, a couple months later, she'll make the accusation that the mayor, Joseph Donovan, dressed up in women's clothing and hid in a cellar so he would be captured.
Wow.
She is the only source that mentions this, that letter. Now, does she have a reason to lie to her niece? Her niece is like in Missouri or something, another state, Illinois, Missouri. She doesn't have a reason to lie to her niece, but I think this is a hearsay story because she wasn't in town. There's just no
Yeah,
way she was in town. If she says, I
yeah,
saw them coming and going, she doesn't say, I saw the fight. She doesn't say anything along those lines. Or I went into town after the fighting. She didn't say any of that.
yeah.
So it's a great story. Joseph Donovan had served as the major of the 10th Kentucky U.S. Cavalry um, in 62 up prior to this. He served as a soldier, right? I highly doubt if the mayor of Augusta dressed up in women's clothing and hid in a cellar. As a matter of fact, he writes one of the reports that's in the official records as a
Huh.
civilian.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't think he did, and nobody else mentions this.
Yeah, that kind of smacks of the whole Jefferson Davis dressed as a woman
Yes.
to not get captured thing, which,
Yes. But he
obviously
did.
isn't
We know that.
the
No,
truth.
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Just kidding.
yeah.
Just kidding. It does. It smacks of that, right? But
Yeah,
again, it's a private letter to her niece. I think it's just hearsay that she picked up from town after
right.
she'd gone
Right.
into town weeks after or whatever. Her son, ironically, Clay Coburn, is a member of Morgan's command, but he's not at Augusta. So she's a Southern sympathizer, right?
Uh-huh. Oh,
And
yeah, so it
so,
makes sense,
yeah.
to
So there's,
believe
yeah,
the hearsay that you wanna believe.
that's right. You take that,
Yeah.
right? Like we do that today, right? We
Mhm.
choose our news outlets today. We do it,
Oh, do it.
right? We choose our news outlets today because we want to hear what we want to believe.
Uh-huh.
Whether it's accurate or not on either side,
Uh-huh.
we listen to that stuff, right? Which is
Oh,
unfortunate.
for
We
sure.
get sucked into
Yeah.
it. Um, there's some other stories like that. Again, there's like one mention of it, like, and nothing else. Now, Anna Diltz, uh, she lived in the house where the Rosemary Clooney Museum is today. And for those of you who are younger, Rosemary Clooney is a sister to Nick Clooney, and that is George Clooney's father. So Rosemary is George's aunt. She was in the movie White Christmas. That's where, like, and she was a very popular singer and actress, like in the 40s and 50s. And so she bought that house in 1980. And then after she passed away, I think I have that right. After she passed away, they turned it into a museum. Well, that was a wartime structure. That's the Diltz house. And Anna was a young, I think she was probably like a teenager or preteen. She kept a diary. Her diaries were actually pretty cool. And she's writing stuff as she, again, as she observed it. But I believe what she says in her diary over some other things that, come along the lines. Dr. Bradford's son, is that right? No. Yes. Dr. Bradford's son is like a 9 or 10-year-old during the battle, but years later writes a recollection. And this
Oh.
recollection has got some interesting stuff in it,
Mhm.
including saying that one of the Confederates was wearing an Indian headdress. Seriously? Maybe he had a
Why?
hat with a plume on it, and the young
Yeah.
boy misremembered 50 years
Yeah.
after the fact or whatever the case may be. But these are the stories that folks will tell. And I was like, well, it's a story. And that particular story is years after the fact. And
Yeah,
there's
it's one
no
of
other
those things
story that
like
says somebody was in a headdress.
yeah. Yeah, and, is the person intentionally lying? I mean, probably not, but
No.
or maybe they are, but it's we had this discussion with my students, at the beginning of the class, we're talking about primary sources and how just because it's a primary source
Right.
doesn't mean it's accurate.
Right.
Because, we mentioned, we all have these memories in our heads of something that happened when we were younger,
Mhm.
and, it happened a certain way. But then when we look at a picture from that same event or a video from that event, it's like, that is very different than the way I actually remember it,
Yeah,
but,
exactly
camera
right.
doesn't lie.
And even
And
if a
so,
primary
maybe it's
source is accurate, it's only accurate from the perspective of that particular individual.
yes,
We've
yeah,
talked about the
uh-huh,
private soldier. His focus is very narrow, right?
uh-huh,
He's only focused on what's pretty much immediately around him, right?
right,
So there's
right,
there's different, and that's why, and you got to have at least two, and preferably three um, sources that kind of say the same thing before you really
yep,
say, okay, that happened, right?
right,
So it's
for
difficult
sure,
to do that. And again, with these stories in Augusta, they're all one story. Like one person said this person said that, this person said this, but you don't have any of them saying the same thing, which is kind
mm,
of funny. No,
yeah,
well, that's
yeah.
Augusta.
That's that's a cool story, and so I'm looking forward to the book, if it's 20 years from now,
In 20
it's
years.
yeah, if it's 30 years, 10 years,
Yeah,
whatever it might be, I'm looking
yeah,
forward to adding that to my shelf.
yeah.
So,
I
before we,
will do before you jump in. I will do a pitch. I do tours of Augusta, a couple hours. It's
yep,
a neat little town to walk around, and it's a walking tour. It's very easy. It's very flat sidewalks. And I talk not only about the battle, but I also give some information about some of the historic houses that are there.
mhm,
And so we blend in some of those stories with the battle story as well. So if anybody's ever interested, you ever get to Augusta, Kentucky, I do work full time, so it usually has to be like a Saturday or Sunday that I need to know about in advance. I will only charge you the princely sum of $1 million, and then right,
that's a
but
deal, that's a deal.
happy to lead people there. So yeah,
If they wanna do some easy payment installments,
yeah, right, right.
yeah,
10
something like that too.
installments of 100,000 each. That works for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So, before we sign off,
yeah.
would you want to remind our
Sure do.
listeners, I guess,
Yeah.
about something coming up next month in
Yeah,
October?
actually, some of us need to get together and talk about how we're gonna do the artillery tour too. Like, I
We
think each
do.
one of us should grab a
We do.
battery, right? And kinda go from
I
there.
claim Washington Artillery. I'm claiming that.
We're not even doing them, are we? I guess maybe we are. You're doing them
Yep.
as yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. Well, you can't really get to their site though, so we'll have to figure that out.
We can
Anyway,
point it out. Yeah.
yeah. So yes, we have the symposium on the field. The idea completely stolen from the symposium in the woods that happens down at Chickamauga. Completely stolen. I will never deny that. As a matter of fact, we talked to Dave Powell about that very thing, and I think he's flattered the fact that we're mimicking what they started down there at
Yeah,
Chickamauga.
that's the best kind of flattery, isn't it? You know.
Right, right, exactly. This takes place. Wow, well, a little over a month. Oh, do I have this date right? 17th, 18th, and 19th of October. Right.
Yes.
It
Yep.
is. So, and I'm going to get all this wrong because again, I'm not looking at anything right now. So, it'll start Friday night, the 17th. We're going to meet at the Bottom House, um, and we're going to talk about Bushrod Johnson and Bushrod Johnson's brigade. That's going to involve probably 20 miles of walking, and I'm joking now because Bushrod doesn't get very far.
Yep.
But we'll walk across the creek, we'll climb up the hill a little bit, and kind of set the stage where he's coming from. We'll talk a little bit about that Washington artillery battery, a little blue on blue. And so
Hmm.
we're going to meet the Bottom House. I think I set that time for 4:30. Trying to
I
start a
believe
little
so.
earlier so we can conclude before dark this year. And if people ask me to take them to Peters Hill, I will, but we're not going to make that part of the tour this year, right?
Well, you can
Um,
just point across and say it's over that way
yeah,
somewhere,
it's over
and
that way.
yeah,
Actually, we'll be able to see it like from the top of the hill if we decide to go up that way, right?
yeah.
So
Okay. Here.
that's Friday night. Oh, by the way, the symposium, how much does it cost, Derek? I'm trying to remember.
Uh, I mean, it's you're gonna set some money back. Actually, no, it's free. It's free.
It's free.
Yeah,
That's right. So
yeah,
it's a
it's
free
free.
symposium. And we're
Mhm.
being a little flippant about it. We just love doing this. I think that's the thing that people need to
It's just
understand.
fun.
Like,
It's one of my favorite things. I mean, I look
yeah,
forward to this every single
we
fall.
just love doing it. I've been doing tours at Perryville every year, and I just love taking groups there. Period. And this is
Yeah.
just so much more fun. So yeah, Friday the 17th is Bushrod. We're going to meet at the Bottom House 4:30, and we're going to talk about the Buckeye Quaker that is Bushrod Rust Johnson.
That's awesome.
Saturday morning, that's the 20th. You're kicking us off this year at 9 a.m. You're going to lead
Yep.
us on an in-depth look at Sterling, Alexander, Martin Woods, Confederate Brigade. Where are we going to meet for that? We haven't really talked about that
Uh,
because
I'm
Wood,
still trying to. Well, not last month. Now, back in July,
yeah,
I went and walked what I think my route's going to be,
yeah,
which it's gonna be some walking.
could be some walking, right?
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, but I'm thinking. I'm still trying to think about the best place to meet just because of parking.
yeah.
Uh, but it's not gonna be miles or anything like that. But
We could
uh,
maybe park on Loomis's Heights. Would that be like a
that's what I was
central?
leaning towards. Yeah,
Okay.
'cause we can be right by the trail right
Yeah.
there, and we can
Okay.
get straight into it. So
That
that's
also ties
that's
in
sort of what
nicely
I was leaning
with the next tour.
toward.
Right.
Yep.
So if so we park there on Loomis's Heights. Anyway, we'll get those details together. Those folks that attend will make sure you know, but most likely it'll be on Loomis's Heights. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, that's the gravel lane that runs through the heart of the battlefield. So that's that
Mhm.
high ground where Loomis's battery was located. So it'd be
Yep.
Harris's brigade and Lytle's brigade. That's at
Yep.
9 o'clock. So then right after that, 11 o'clock is Mississippians. Taylor Bishop will break down Jones's brigade, and that'll probably be our hilliest walk of the weekend.
That is
Um,
some up and downs there.
yeah, it's up and down right there, but it's not a long walk. It's just going to be, down towards the creek and up and down a couple hills. So that'll be a good one. It's kind of a follow on to what he did our first year.
Yeah, he
Where he
did
took us
Florida
down.
Brigade,
Yeah, he
that
took us
year.
to take care of Brown, and he talked about Jones a little bit, but I
Mhm.
think he's going to really focus on Jones because there's some reinterpretation of where how those regiments were organized,
Okay.
deployed is the
Mhm.
word I'm looking for there. So that's going to be then, and then we have to make sure that the young man doesn't talk too long because he gives us a lot of knowledge, but we got to conclude at 1 o'clock so that people can get to lunch.
Yep.
There are a couple restaurants in Perryville. You can also pack and eat at the park. Although the Civil War Hall has been torn down,
Yeah, it
and
was not there in July.
yeah, the picnic area that was next to that has been torn down, but there's still a picnic shelter uh, on the other side where the playground's located. So people could
Yeah.
grab that,
Yeah.
I guess, to eat, or just eat in your car, or like I said, go into town and grab something to eat. We're going to get back together at 2:30. We're going to meet at the Dye House, and this is something we've never done on the symposium. So if you're driving up Battlefield Road and you're heading towards the park, the Dye House comes up before that, and it's purported to be Buckner's headquarters. I don't know how much time he really spent there, but that's where
I
we're
don't
going to
think very
meet,
much.
and we're going to cover a couple of Confederate batteries from that place, and
Hmm.
then we're going to hop in our cars, drive over to Loomis's Heights. I think we'll have to work this all out and talk about a couple Union batteries and maybe the Washington Artillery at that point too. And we'll have to figure that out because I envision each tour guide to grab a battery
Hmm.
because I don't know if I have enough time to research a whole bunch of them along with my
No,
own
you
tour. So
definitely
we'll have to break
different.
that down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then after that, at 5:30, we have the evening meet and greet at the historic Bottom House again, and that's hosted by our friends of Perryville Battlefield, who literally are the reason why we can do this because they have the permits in place with the state that allows us to do the symposium on the field.
Yeah.
Some of the tour guides will be there selling books. I think we've reached out to a few others who aren't necessarily tour guides this year to also bring their
But
books
yeah,
potentially.
there's gonna be some other authors, so bring your cash.
Yeah,
Bring your
bring your
cash.
cash, right? Bring your cash.
Mhm.
Um, and then Dan Masters is going to give a talk. And he's going to talk about the impact of the Kentucky campaign and the Battle of Perryville on the rest of the war. I wonder if he's going to mention Stones River. I just wonder.
Nah.
So, yeah, right. And then we have Jamie Gillum. The gunny's going to come back and he's going to lead us on a tour of AP Stewart's Brigade. And I think Gunny's going to give us a little different insight again, much like he did with Donaldson last year,
Mhm.
which was I enjoyed that. I am not 100% believer, but I can see some of Jamie's points.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think he's going to give us a little good insight or a good insight on Stewart's Brigade because it never really gets talked about, but I think it's the brigade that takes the second highest casualties
Yeah.
on
They
the
kinda get
Confederate
glossed
side.
over for Manny's, I feel like, and yeah.
Yeah, and we do Manny's and you know, that's pretty much it for Cheatham, right? We never really talk well,
I
Donaldson,
mean,
of
Sam
course, but
Watkins in the 1st Tennessee did everything there, right? I mean,
yeah, or nothing. Well, it depends. But I think Jamie will give us some insight on how a lot of Stewart's regiments kind of overlapped and came up
mhm.
and intermingled in with Manny. So I think that'll be good. And then afterwards, if folks want to talk about like tour ideas for next year or tour debrief, Derrick and I and the tour guides were happy to listen and then totally ignore what you said.
Yep.
Um, and
It's
I'm
one end up the
joking.
other.
I'm partially joking, but I also I'm kind of serious because God love Michael Trent. He has asked for a Leonard Harris Brigade tour, and I keep forgetting to do that. So next year, I'm doing Leonard Harris. He was the mayor of Cincinnati during the Civil War, and so he's one of those cool cats. I kind of like him a little bit.
You've heard it here first.
Yeah, you
Harris
heard it
next
here
year.
first. I'm going to start posting the 2026 agenda.
Yeah,
Uh,
already.
yeah, get that up and running. It is a free symposium, folks. You, of course, pay for your lodging and your meals and getting there. Any donations you want to give to the Friends of Perryville, that's great. They will have stuff there to sell. I'm sure they have had in the past years. You can become a member there, and then again, as we mentioned, there are going to be some authors there selling their wares as well.
Yep.
Um, we have I have to keep going and cleaning up the guest list because we've had folks that have registered 2 and 3 times.
Yeah,
I think
that's
because I
on
think
that's
folks
on
forget, and that's okay. I've cleaned it up. We have about 70 people signed up this year.
Yeah,
If
that's
you can
awesome.
make it and you're signed up, that's great. If you can't make it and you're signed up, please change your RSVP so we can let the Friends of Perryville folks know how many people are actually coming to the event because they have provided food for us in the past.
Mhm.
And so we don't want them having too much and we don't want them having not enough, right? So
Right.
just do that. If you can't make it, please go back to the event on the website and change your RSVP. If you haven't RSVP'd and you are planning on coming, please do so
Yep.
because we would love to. I'd love to see 70 people there. Like I think the most
Yep.
we've had is 55 or so different faces so far
Mhm.
over the weekend. I would love to see 70. I would love to see 4,000, but that might cause some
One day,
increase.
one day.
Yeah, one day, right? one day, the same day I get that book written.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's free. You can find details on our website, westerntheatercivilwar.com. Just click then on the events link, and you'll see some events there. And it's called
Great.
Symposium on the Field at Perryville. All right. I've beat that to death.
Yep.
So
I think that's got it all.
yeah,
So,
it's got it all.
well,
Oh, you know what? We have another thing coming up too. We're going to lead it. I got to work this one out in my head. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but you and I have agreed to do something for the Fort Donelson Symposium in
oh yeah,
February
that's
next year.
right. That's right. Yep.
And so we're going to try to do both the 1862 and the 1863 battles of Dover that took
Mhm.
place obviously after the fall of Fort Donelson, several months after the fall of Fort Donelson. So we're going to try to do that. We did a pretty cool tour. It was a nice tour. It was a beautiful day of the McPherson's attack on February 13th. So we climbed up to Manny's battery position, which was great. And so we're going to do kind of that tour there at Dover. And I don't know how long it'll last because they're not huge actions. And we'll walk
No,
around
they're not.
downtown just a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're doing that. And then we have the symposium all the next day. So that's something cool. Another
It'll
free
be a good
event, by
time.
the way. So,
Yeah. It'll be
uh,
a good time.
yeah, it should be a good
Well,
time. Should be a grand time.
well,
Again, you can sign up for that also on the website if you
that's
don't
right.
mind,
Go to it.
mind doing that. Actually, we have like only 4 people signed up for that. So I'm really disappointed in that right
I
now.
think once the word gets out, I think
I think
they'll
it
pop
will.
up.
Well, like even the Perryville thing, like it grew like crazy, like over the last month, 2 months. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. That's typical, I think.
absolutely so.
Well,
Oh,
well, I guess for both of us, I want to thank you all for listening tonight. Please go visit westerntheatercivilwar.com, like Darryl said. And if you feel like giving, there's a place where you can do that on there. We would greatly appreciate it. So, for both of us, we just want to thank you for listening and have a great night or good morning, start of your day, whatever time of day it is you're listening to this. So, we will see you all next time.
thanks everyone.